We're going to tackle a huge question today, one that gets right to the heart of our modern lives, our technology, our psychology, and our most ancient brain wiring. So here it is. Is compulsive internet porn use a real addiction, or is it just a very, very hard habit to break? Now, to get to the bottom of this, we've got to cut through all the noise and opinions and look at the hardware itself, the human brain. Let's dive in and see what's actually going on in there. Okay, first things first, we've got to get the basics down. Deep inside your brain, there's this ancient piece of machinery, and its main job is incredibly simple: keep our species going. It's called the reward circuit. Now, here's something that might blow your mind. This system, its main job, isn't actually about pleasure. Nope, it's about something way more fundamental: motivation. Its entire purpose is to make absolutely sure you do the things that are critical for survival, again and again. And the star player here is a chemical I'm sure you've heard of, dopamine. But it's so often misunderstood. Think of it less like a pleasure chemical and more like the do that again signal. When you do something important, dopamine is like your brain slapping a giant sticky note on it that says, yes, that was good. Remember it, repeat it. So the natural cycle is really elegant. You eat a meal that's packed with energy, boom, you get a little burst of dopamine. Your brain strengthens that connection, and just like that, you're motivated to find that food again. It's a brilliant little loop that has kept us alive for thousands of years. And that system works perfectly for the natural world it evolved in. But our modern world, it's thrown a few curveballs that this ancient system just wasn't prepared for. And this is where things start to get really complicated. Which brings us to a really crucial idea in neuroscience. It's called a supernormal stimulus. All it means is an artificial trigger that's been cranked up to 11. An exaggerated version of something natural. And because it's so intense, our ancient brain wiring can get completely overwhelmed by it. This idea is the key to everything else we're going to talk about. And this classic experiment just nails the concept. A Nobel-winning scientist found that birds who are wired to sit on the biggest, healthiest-looking eggs would literally abandon their own real eggs to go sit on giant, brightly colored fakes. Let that sink in. They choose the fake over their own offspring. That's how powerful this hijacking effect can be. So this is exactly where internet pornography enters the story. It is, for all intents and purposes, a supernormal stimulus. Why? Because it offers a cocktail the real world just can't compete with. Endless novelty, an intensity dialed way past reality, and you can get it all with zero effort. Our poor ancient brains just weren't built to handle that. Okay, so we've got this incredibly powerful stimulus, but does it actually change the brain in ways that look like other addictions? Well, let's take a peek at what the brain scans are starting to show us. And here's the bottom line from multiple studies. For people who get into a compulsive pattern of use, their brains start showing changes and reactions that are strikingly similar to what we see in people addicted to substances. Now, this next part is fascinating, and it gets to the very core of addiction science, the split between wanting and liking. Check out the data here from a major study. On the left, you can see that compulsive users didn't actually report liking the videos any more than anyone else. But now look to the right, at the wanting column. The desire, the craving for it, was off the charts. And this split, where the motivation to chase something skyrockets, while the actual pleasure you get from it just flatlines, that is considered a neurological hallmark of addiction. It's like the craving engine decouples from the reward system and just goes rogue. And we're seeing physical and functional changes too. A German study found that more porn use was linked to less gray matter in a key part of the reward system. They also saw the brain's response to sexual images was getting weaker, which suggests tolerance is building up. But maybe the most important finding was this: the connection between the prefrontal cortex, your brain's CEO, and the striatum, your brain's habit center, was getting weaker. In other words, the brakes were wearing out. So all of this points to a brain that's adapting to being overwhelmed. And in the process, it's weakening its own control circuits. But the big question is, does this have an impact on your thinking in the moment? Well, one study used the classic Stroop test to find out. It's a simple test psychologists use to measure your focus and impulse control. They had frequent users do the test, then watch explicit material, then do it again. The results you see here are crystal clear. After viewing, their reaction times got slower, and their accuracy dropped a lot. What that tells us is that there's a temporary, measurable hit to what scientists call our executive functions. Your ability to manage impulses, to make good decisions, to just stay focused. It was literally degraded right after use. All right, let's pull all of this together. What does all of this emerging science tell us about that question we started with? When you step back and look at all the evidence, the basic reward circuit, the supernormal stimulus effect, and the latest brain scans, a really distinct pattern starts to emerge. And here it is. From a strictly neurobiological point of view, the patterns of craving, tolerance, and impaired cognitive control that we see in compulsive porn use show strong parallels to recognized substance addictions. Now, that's not a moral statement. It's just an observation of what happens when modern technology meets our ancient brain wiring. And of course, it's so important to remember that this is just for general information. It is not personal medical advice. If you have any concerns at all about your own habits or well-being, please have a conversation with a qualified healthcare professional. And that really leaves us with a much bigger question to chew on, doesn't it? Because this isn't just about pornography. It's about hyper-palatable junk food, endless social media feeds, immersive video games. The real challenge for all of us is figuring out how we navigate this profound mismatch between the ancient brain we've inherited and the incredible modern world we've built.